Just this week, 9 skiers died in an avalanche near Lake Tahoe. Going to go down as one of the most lethal slides in U.S. history, and everybody's got questions. Like, why did they ski out to these remote huts when the storm was forecast well in advance? Why did they leave the safety of the hut to make a dash for it when the storm did hit? How did 3 of the 4 guides get buried by the very same snowpack they'd spent their careers studying? And what's the mind-bending paradox of taking risks in the backcountry that mountain guides know, but never tell their clients? I've skied and guided in terrain not far from those mountains, and as we speak, I'm about to go out and ski the Rocky Mountain end of that very same storm. But for now, I wanted to share some broader thoughts on risky decision-making in complex situations, using backcountry skiing in this recent tragedy as a lens to unpack how messy humans in so many domains of our lives, from geopolitics to vaccine policies to business decisions to unsafe sex or substance use, all fall into the same traps, and hopefully how to get out of them. Let's start with the paradox that the more experienced an outdoor guide is, the more likely they are to get clipped in an avalanche. That's like realizing that Harvard MBAs are more likely to go bankrupt, or that Olympic athletes are more likely to have heart attacks. It's confounding, which is what one curious colleague of mine thought too. He had a hunch. It wasn't the science of snow safety that was off. It was the psychology. That researcher's name is Ian McCammon. He was a longtime NOLS outdoor instructor who doubled down getting his PhD at the University of Utah. He wanted to solve that paradox we're talking about. How come the smarter you are as a leader, the dumber the decisions you're liable to make? Ski patrollers, avalanche forecasters, and alpine guides die more frequently than tourists. It's not quite that simple, but it's close. First, let's take the obvious. Experts go out more often, and they put themselves in more dangerous terrain. Novices tend to plunk around well-known trails. They may not have the gear or the skills or the fitness or the ambition to get into the really sketchy stuff. But experts, they know what they're doing, and they've studied the dynamics of mountains and snowpacks more than anyone else. So why were they dying way more often than they should have? And what does this have to do with you scrolling through try-hard leadership posts on LinkedIn or life coach advice on Instagram? Because leaders tend to face the same kinds of decisions regardless of the environments they lead in. They never have enough information, and they have to consistently decide and lead others with less resources and certainty than anyone would like. So to come back to our original question, why do pros get it wrong more often than novices? And how can we break out of that trap? Build on the accumulated insights of those communities or practices that live and die by their mistakes. Become vigilant when you cross the threshold into a high-stakes, high-uncertainty situation, and commit these next 5 factors to memory. Find the relevant analogies in your own life and work, and then beat yourself over the head with them. Force yourself to act on this accumulated wisdom, not your own rationalizing in the moment. Because in his dissertation research on avalanche safety, McCammon even boiled it down to a handy acronym to help us remember when we're prone to forget. He called it FACETS. And it's F, familiarity; A, acceptance; C, commitment; E, expert halo; T and S, tracks or scarcity. So this is how smart people, experienced people, die more often than they should. They get this stuff wrong. The slippery slope that leads to bad decisions in the mountains comes for us all, wherever we sit. So let's take them one at a time. Number 1, familiarity, assuming a terrain is safe because you've been there before. Last time we launched a new product, we absolutely killed it with this strategy. Or Facebook's more reliable for advertising than Snapchat or TikTok. Or last time I took a bump of some friends ketamine at a party, we had a great time. It definitely wasn't fentanyl. We get lulled into complacency based on repetition. If things don't look new and risky, we assume they're familiar and safe, and what worked last time will work again this time. Number 2, acceptance. Going along with the group's decision even if you have concerns, like following a trend that everyone seems to be chasing, or accepting a norm in your industry or in your parenting that doesn't make sense any more than it ever did, or adjusting to a vibe shift you're just committed to staying on the right side of. We are tribal primates, and we are hardwired to cue out each other and fit in, often to our own detriment. This is typically the stuff of teenagers and adolescents in middle school, where we're so sensitive to peer group approval, we'd occasionally lose ourselves to the hive mind. But it still happens to grown-ups, even professional ones. Lemmings also go along to get along, and look where that gets them. Number 3, commitment, feeling obligated to continue a plan even if the conditions on the ground change. It's sunk cost fallacy 101. We've invested so much time, people, money, hope into X, Y, or Z. It would be crazy to turn back now. Throwing good money, good calories, good time after bad doesn't necessarily increase the odds of a good return. For the victims in Tahoe this week, they had to book this trip to a sold-out hut a year in advance. To cancel it in the face of an epic storm and potentially epic powder skiing might have been one factor in their decision to push ahead, regardless of the forecast. Sometimes, turning around without the summit photo is the best thing you can do to salvage what's left. As Ed Viesturs, the Everest climbing legend, reminds us, summiting is optional, but getting home is mandatory. And how many of us are comfortable enough turning around just shy of our goal, especially when we've come so far and it seems so close? Next, the expert halo, overly relying on the opinion of a perceived expert in the group. This one is everywhere these days, with all the shouting on Instagram and podcasts by self-anointed experts. But think how often we defer our own ideas in favor of parroting or echoing an analyst, or a doctor, or a teacher, or a pundit's point of view against our own better judgment. Remember, no one cares about your life, your health, your finances, your children, your company, or your mortal soul more than you do. Not even those experts, no matter how confident they may appear. And finally, tracks and scarcity. Choosing a slope to ski because others have already skied it or might beat you to it creates a sense of urgency. It's well established in behavioral psychology that we are more strongly wired to avoid loss, even more than we're inspired to acquire gains. So when we stare at a fresh slope of powder while another group's racing to get to it first, it can nudge us to rush in where it really should, grab it, or someone else can. Now, translate this to investing in crypto, or AI, or gold, or saying yes to a trip, or an after-party invite that turned out to be lame or more of the same, mostly because you didn't want to miss out. Note those feelings of FOMO that spurred you not to miss out, to grab it before it was gone. Notice what motivated reasoning overrode your normal checklists and gut sense intuition. Be fearful when others are greedy, all that jazz. So, that's a quick overview of the leadership insights that arose from studying decades of avalanche accidents and the human factors that cause them. And while it's going to take some time for the search and rescue teams to debrief and fully analyze the Tahoe tragedy, it's likely that some or all of those 5 factors were in play. How we decide and how we lead isn't always as smart as we think, but learning from the pros and their mistakes gives us more clarity on what our own heuristics or rules of thumb do us daily. So go out there and make some good decisions, or at the very least, be more aware when you're about to make some really bad ones.